What's going on, guys? My name is Keneal and I'm the student E-group leader for the 9th and 10th graders. In week 1, we spoke about our direction determining our destination. We are continuing this series called Road Signs, and last week we asked the question, how do we know when we're making wrong decisions? See, God puts up warning signs that tell us to turn around when we're stepping in the wrong direction. And when we turn at the right time that God says it, we avoid the traps that the devil has put forward. So guys, sit back and enjoy the show.
What's up, guys? Thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us again as we continue our series called Road Signs. You know, the first week we got together, we talked about this thing called the path principle. Well, what is the path principle? It simply says this, that your direction determines your destination. It's not your good hopes, it's not your good intentions, it's not your good dreams, but it's simply the direction that you choose. Whatever path or road you start heading down, whatever direction that is heading, that direction will determine your destination. Well, last week we asked the question, well, how do we know if we're on the right path or not? How do we not know that we're on the wrong path and we're headed down the wrong direction? And we said, well, God in heaven simply loves us so much that He gives us these warning signs that tell us that we're on the wrong path. And it's up to us to acknowledge these warning signs, and it's up to us to see those warning signs and to change course, to change direction, to choose a different path at that moment. Well, this week I want to continue our talk, and I want to point out one simple, small problem with the path principle. The small problem is this: we can't predict the future. We are not Marty McFly from Back to the Future. We do not know what's going to take place at the end of the path. We have no idea what's going to take place at the end of the road that we choose. And so what do? Well, sometimes we think if we just have all of the variables, if we just have all the facts, if we just have enough intelligence and enough experience, then we'll know if it's the right path or not, you know. But here's the deal. Sometimes even if we had all of the facts, even if we had all of the variables, there's been many times in our own lives that we have known all the variables. And even so, we make that decision, that wrong decision. Well, why is that? Well, I want to turn our attention to this guy named Solomon. We talked about him the first week we were together. And Solomon, he was known to be the wisest man to have ever lived on the earth. And Solomon, at the age of 17, he was kind of thrown into kingship. His dad was the king of the nation of Israel, and his dad suddenly died. And all of a sudden, King Solomon, the age of 17, was kind of thrown into leadership. He was asked to lead the nation of Israel. And he's starting to freak out a little bit. You know, he's stressing out, and he's worried because he has no experience of being a king. He has no idea what decision and what choice to make. And so in his dreams, God comes to Solomon in his dreams. And he asks Solomon this. He says, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Ask me whatever you will, and I will do it for you. It's like all of a sudden God has turned into some kind of like genie in the bottle, or maybe like God has turned into some kind of Santa Claus. And he's willing to grant any wish that Solomon is asking. Whatever Solomon wants, God's saying, I'll give it to you. And you know, at the age of 17, I don't know about you, but like I would probably ask for like an Xbox, you know, like I would ask, like I probably just got my license. I'm gonna ask, hey man, God, can you give me a BMW? I mean, I would love that so much. How about a Jeep Wrangler? You know, I'm probably gonna want some wheels so that I can get around. But more than anything else, Solomon, he simply asked God, more than anything else, I want wisdom. I want discernment. I want understanding. I want good judgment. I mean, that's what you would have asked for, right? I mean, not me. I mean, but here's the deal. Solomon, at the age of 17, the biggest desire, The greatest desire of Solomon's heart was simply to have good discernment, to have good understanding, and to have immense wisdom. And I love what God responds to him. This is what God says. He simply says this in 1 Kings 3:11. Because you have asked for this instead of requesting long life, wealth, or victory over your enemies, asking for discernment so as to acquire good judgment, I will now do just what you said. Look, I hereby give you a wise and understanding mind. There has been no one like you before now, nor will there be anyone like you afterward. I now also give you what you didn't ask for, wealth and fame. There won't be a king like you as long as you live, and if you walk in my ways and obey my laws and commands, just as your father David did, then I will give you a very long life. Here, Solomon is the wisest man to have ever lived. I mean, if there's anybody in the world that can say, man, I've got enough smarts, I've got enough intelligence that I don't need any help in making good decisions, it would be Solomon. But Solomon understood that it's not just about intelligence. It's not just about all the experience that you can have. Solomon knew that there was something that we must all have. There's a missing element that we must all have in order to make our good decisions. And he teaches his sons this. He actually writes it down and tells his sons, listen, more than anything else, this is what you need. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't rely on your own intelligence. The Message version actually says this, trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything out on your own. I love that. He understands that, man, it's more than just being smart. It's more than just being intelligent. It's more than having all of the experience in the world. He says, man, you've got to trust in the Lord to help you out along the way. You've got to trust in Him. Solomon clarifies this and he says this. He says, lean not on your own understanding. That term lean actually means to prop something up against something else. So many times we try to look at our situations and we try to look at the choices that we've got to make, the decisions that we have to make, and we come to a crossroads in our life. And so many times we prop our situation up against our own understanding. Well, if I understand this about it, then I'll make this decision. Or if I know this about this, then I'll choose this. And we try to rely on our own intelligence. But he says, listen, don't lean on your own understanding. And I love this. He goes on to say this. He says, but acknowledge Him. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, meaning God. And if you would acknowledge Him, He will make your path straight. I love that. Just like this roundabout, you see all these cars going in circles, and they're just driving in circles and in circles and in circles and in circles. And he says, listen, if you would just acknowledge me, if you would just yield your life to me, he says, then I will make your path straight. You won't be running in circles anymore. You won't be driving in circles in your life. Instead, I will make your path straight and I will make your path clear. See, I think Solomon, more than anybody else, he understood that intelligence isn't enough. Knowledge isn't enough. Understanding isn't enough. Experience isn't enough. It's not enough. He goes on to say this. Don't assume that you know it all. I love that. In Proverbs 3:7, don't assume that you know it all. Run to God and run from evil. I love that Solomon caps this little lesson off with this one little statement. You know, he's gone through this whole thing of saying, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge Him in all that you do, and He'll make your path straight. But he caps it off with this in Proverbs 3:7. He says, don't assume that you know it all. Don't assume that you know it all. Instead, run to God and run from evil. You know, Solomon wrote this passage after a huge problem in his life. You know, Solomon, he was the king of the nation of Israel, right? He was leading this nation called Israel, and it was surrounded by other nations. But Israel was a smaller nation. And he began to figure out, okay, how am I going to strategize how to defend my nation? How will I protect our kingdom? And when he was searching for an idea, when he was searching for how should I do this? How should I protect it? How should we defend ourselves? He settled into his own intelligence, his own experience, and he turned He turned to the customs of his nation. He did exactly what everybody else did. He went and he married the daughters of every king that surrounded his kingdom. He said, man, if I'm married to them, all of a sudden we're family, right? And if we're family, then we have this natural alliance that takes place, and they're gonna protect me and I'm gonna protect them. But here's the problem. This is the one area in Solomon's life that he did not trust in the Lord. He relied on his own intelligence, he relied on his own experience, and he did exactly what everybody else did, instead of going to God, seeking help. And because he made this decision, because he trusted in his own intelligence, it was ultimately the demise of his family and his kingdom. He says this in Proverbs 3:7. Don't assume that you know it all. Run to God and run from evil. You know, I want to close tonight by saying this. Is there an area in your life that you haven't acknowledged God? And you're trusting on your own intelligence, and you're trusting on your own experience, and you think you've got it all under control, and you've assumed that you know it all? Is there a place like that where you really need to acknowledge God? Solomon, the wisest man who've ever lived, says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Don't assume you know it all, but instead, run to God and run from evil.